So we think that we have the geological environment. Round Mountain and Atlanta have a lot of similarities. They both formed around similar times, similar circumstances. We have oxide. We also hit very high grade, and we've hit very high grade in many holes. The most exceptional hole that we hit was 108 meters of 11 grams, which was the best hole in Nevada. And all of that tells you that this is a big, powerful gold system. We've had phenomenal speed in the drilling, and the costs per meter are coming in at like $75 all in, which is incredibly cheap. To answer your question, what are we building this for? We'll do whatever it takes to unlock the most value. It's very, very difficult to have a significant discovery in Nevada and have that team take it to production because it just doesn't last. Somebody will come along and offer you more money than a reasonable person would say no to.
All right, today we're having a discussion with Collin Kettell, the CEO of Nevada King Gold, a growing high-grade oxide discovery, like the name suggests, located in Nevada. Collin, it's great to have you on the channel. Welcome. Perhaps we can start off with a short and sweet high-level overview from your side.
For sure, Stein. Thanks for having me on the program. Nevada King is a very easy to digest story at this point in time. We're a single asset focused company. We've got a high grade oxide discovery that we're advancing, which is located in the southeast portion of the state. And we've been drilling for the past 3 to 4 years. We've done 100,000 meters of drilling. Going into that, we do have a 43-101 resource on the project. And so talking big picture, what is it we're trying to accomplish here? We think the Atlanta system has the potential to be big, and I'm only interested in looking for and exploring for big things. And if you look at the Nevada landscape, there has not been a sizable discovery for the past decade and a half, really. And so our goal is to go ahead and make that big discovery, and we think Atlanta has just about the best shot in the state that we're aware of right now in terms of geological environment and also the amount of activity that's going into the project, which we've been leading, of course, under the moniker of Nevada King for the past few years.
Great, thank you. Definitely a good overview there. I would love to dive into the exploration thesis, because of course you acquired this project at some point. And by the way, feel free to pull up any visuals that you want to support your story. There was a resource in place. What are you doing differently, and what are you really looking for here to discover that big deposit that you were talking about?
So when we picked up Atlanta, which we picked up back in about 2020, there was an existing resource at the project, and the resource has approximately 440,000 ounces measured and indicated, and another 150,000 inferred ounces. So when you wrap it all together, you're looking at about 600,000 ounces. Now the geological setting for how the gold deposited at Atlanta, and I'm not a geologist, but I can certainly regurgitate information that I've picked up along the way, is a caldera setting. So you can think of a volcano that existed 30 million years ago, and around the rim of this volcano, much like if you took a pot of water and put it on a gas stove, and that you turn the stove on, it would boil around the edges. The same kind of concept happens here. And so where the Atlanta deposit is formed is at the edge, the eastern margin of this caldera, this volcano. So this particular caldera is about 6 kilometers wide in diameter, and we have the entirety of the caldera controlled. And so going into this acquisition back in 2020, what had us and our geological team very excited was this bigger setting, because these bigger settings or this caldera can actually generate large gold systems. Do we have an example of this in Nevada? Yes, of course we do, which is Round Mountain. And Round Mountain, which is operated by Kinross today, has about 24 million ounces of gold. It's one of the elephants. And unusual about Round Mountain, it's one of the only elephants that's not in one of the major trends. The major trends being the Carlin trend and the Battle Mountain Cortez trend. So we think that we have the geological environment. Round Mountain and Atlanta have a lot of similarities. They both formed around similar times, similar circumstances. The difference, of course, being Atlanta endowed with less than 1 million ounces when we picked it up, Round Mountain something much more. And so do we think that this has the opportunity and the potential to be something much bigger? What we did starting off in 2021 and really going up until the middle of last year was our phase 2 drill program, which followed a very short phase 1 drill program. And between the phase 1 and phase 2 drill programs, we spent a lot of focus going around the Atlanta resource area itself. And so we checked off a few boxes that really made us excited and I think has got the market to buy into this. One almost everything that we drill is oxide. Oxide from a processing standpoint, all gold is not created equal. It's so important to make sure that you have a potential economic process to get the gold out of the ground. And so, you can have a 2 million ounce deposit here and a 2 million ounce deposit here, and people will say, well, why is this one worth $2 million and this is worth 200 million? And because there's so much more, of course, that goes into a system than just the number. So we have oxide. We also hit very high grade, and we've hit very high grade in many holes. The most exceptional hole that we hit was in October of 2023, where we hit 108 meters of 11 grams, which was the best hole in Nevada for the year and for some time. And so not only did we have very high grade gold, but we also have thick intercepts of gold. So we've got oxide, high grade, thick intercepts, and all of that tells you that this is a big, powerful gold system. And so the next question that we had is, does this gold system potentially show itself in other areas around this caldera, which is largely unexplored? And we started to have some very significant breakthroughs in that department by the middle of last year. I'm not going to pull the slides up, but this is detailed in the slides. I'll just walk you through. Effectively, what we started doing is we started stepping out to the south, to the east, and to the west. So on three sides of the resource, and significantly. And so I'll start with on the east side. On the east side, there's a high ridge that comes up above the resource. And because there's a topographical high, there's no roads. And so past explorers that worked on this project 20, 30, 40 years ago never bothered drilling on the top of that ridge. But what we did is we started running some powerful geophysics, and the geophysics essentially create these heat maps. And I kind of laugh because a lot of times junior mining promoters will show me one of these heat maps, and they point like there, the gold should be there, and it's hard to ever discern that anything comes out of it. Yeah, you've got that up right there. And so what we're looking at here is that the dark blue area is highly resistive rock, not good for deposition of gold. It doesn't absorb the gold, but the lighter colors do. And so if you look on the left side where it says WAGZ, AMFZ, that's essentially where the resource is. And then as you go up the ridge, at the top of the ridge, you see this bright red area poking out, and that's at the east ridge. And on surface at the east ridge, we actually have gold in grab samples running up to 2 grams per ton. So once we got this geophysics back, we thought, okay, we better go drill this, because if we hit gold and the gold is rooted, we know that we can rely on the geophysics to go ahead and actually look for or try to find gold in other parts of the district. So we went ahead and we drilled it, and starting from surface, we hit about 25 meters of 1.3 grams in one of the first holes. And this gave us, great excitement that this geophysical tool could actually help us hone in on mineralization. Now note that this East Ridge target is pretty discrete. It's kind of small. So we know it's not a big area that we're going to find 1 million ounces of gold. It was more so a proof of concept, which is what we used it for. And so what we then did is we took that over to the next area called the South Quartzite Ridge. And so the South Quartzite Ridge is a high ridge that comes right out of the southern portion of the resource. So that red ring you're looking at is the resource area, and then you can see that high ridge, which extends for about 2.5 kilometers, called the South Quartzite Ridge. And there's a few interesting things about this ridge. First of all, it had never been drilled aside from 7 shallow holes by historic operators. The entire ridge is a giant slab of quartzite. And so if we think about that geophysics again, the top of that ridge is going to show up as dark blue. It's not going to be a good host for gold. And the past operators knew this, so they kind of discounted the potential of what could be below it. Well, when we got our geophysics back below the dark blue, we actually saw what looked like intrusive activity, so potentially mineralization coming from that caldera and pooling up beneath it. And so what we did is we dragged the drill rig as far south up to the ridge as we could, and we drilled through the quartzite, and we hit 55 meters of 6.3 grams per ton gold, which is phenomenally high grade. It was all intrusive rock, and it was all heavily oxidized. And so now we sat back and said, well, this South Quartzite Ridge, which happens to extend a long strike for the next 2.5 kilometers following the resource, is now open for business. And so what started after that is us beginning to plan our Phase 3 drill program. We are now in the Phase 3 drill program, and the Phase 3 drill program is a brand new chapter for Atlanta and for Nevada King. This is us taking all of the knowledge that we've garnered from in and around the resource area, getting an understanding of how the gold mineralization formed, what kind of host rocks are good for gold at Atlanta, and taking that knowledge with the geophysics and applying it to the broad district. And this is the exciting part. Yes, whenever you're doing exploration of this nature, it's high risk. High risk in that, you're taking bolder steps. You might not find gold, but if you do, this is where you could have a major re-rate of the company. And we really think that with the geophysical tools we have and the drilling that we're doing, not just at the South Quartzite Ridge, but all around the caldera, that we've got a very good shot of creating a new and exciting discovery here in Nevada.
All right, thank you for that overview there. Great to see the geophysical tools being employed to find the next targets. Always a great sign to see if that's possible on your project. Perhaps we can talk about the jewelry boxes that are also talked about in the presentation. What are those all about? They're high-grade zones. Perhaps you can take us through how they are formed, what the thesis behind them is, and where you're supposed to find them.
Yeah, for sure. So let's back up into our Phase 2 program, and in and around the resource area, it was always envisioned by past operators. So I keep talking about past operators. This project was in production from 1975 to 1985, open pit production by a company called Standard Slag. After the gold prices plummeted, they shut down production because they were simply mining a vein that came up to surface, and when that pit got too big, they didn't continue. They had never explored what was below the pit. After that, it got into the hands of Goldfields and Kinross, so two sizable companies. And both companies had a significant go at the project. Between them, they did about 40,000 meters of drilling. But neither of them, for market reasons or just priorities of the company or finding enough at the time, stuck with it, and hence it eventually fell into our hands. Well, all through the mining and exploration process, they adhered to this single vein model. What you can see there is there's a single vein on the left side shown as the old model on slide 18. And what the old timers thought is that the gold was actually coming up through this single vein, and it was depositing all along the vein. And so this one control was the only control, and that of course is a very limiting factor. But what they did to explore is they'd sat off to the west, and you can see we've got a couple drill holes shown on the left side there, where they would just drill holes, and if they got a thicker area, they thought it was a swell, and if they got a thinner area, they thought it was a pinch. Well, Cal immediately thought and recognized that this was incorrect, and that there was actually multiple high-angle faults that ran parallel, and also, you can't see it in this form, but they actually cross-cut, so they're going north-south and east-west. And each and every single one of these actually acts as a conduit for that fluid to come up from beneath and then feed into these generally horizontal beds. And so this is a Collin type model, and it can produce significantly more gold mineralization. There's more area for gold to be deposited in. There's also the opportunity for a lot more high-grade gold to form, because typically, if you think about it, your high grade is coming up through those structures, and then it's going to bleed out. So as you get further away, you're going to get lower grade. Closer to the structure, you're going to get a higher grade. And so you asked about these jewelry boxes. When we hit that hole back in October of 2023, which had a 29-meter intercept running 36 grams, we immediately called this a jewelry box. You have plus 1 ounce over a third of a football field. And what this showed is that if you drill close enough to these veins, or where these veins cross-cut, where that concentration of gold is extremely strong, you're going to get incredibly strong gold mineralization. It doesn't just happen in one area. We show slide 22, 23, where there's actually 23 it would be, multiple areas where you can find high-grade gold. So each and every one of these diamonds or circles are either holes that were drilled by us or historical operators respectively, and these are each areas where we call a jewelry box, because you have essentially 100 gram meters of gold, so a lot of gold essentially packed into a small area. And so the exciting thing is you look, and these jewelry boxes, as we call them, tend to be coinciding roughly with where these high-angle features come up. So if we can figure out where these high-angle features are, we can target, and we have effectively targeted high-grade gold. We also can now track and trace these high-angle features through the geophysics. They show up into places, for example, like the South Quartzite Ridge. And so right now, and I'm happy to talk more about where we are now with our Phase 3 program, but one of the things that we're trying to do, of course, is finding where do those high-angle structures come up 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers to the south, putting the first ever drill holes in them and seeing, is there mineralizing fluid that's coinciding with those areas, because that would of course mark a major discovery for us.
Yeah, 100% very clear, and I would love to get an update on phase 3 as well. And I guess, I suppose when those fault structures are crossing, that's where you really expect to find the high-grade stuff. Is that a correct assumption?
Absolutely. So you can see hole 44, which is the purple diamond, almost the one at the top left there, next to the green circle and the red diamond. That purple diamond is the highest grade hole that we ever hit. And yes, you're right. You can see the West Atlanta Fault, number 1, and the North Fault tend to coincide in that area. And there's a couple areas throughout the deposit area where we see really nice concentrations of high grade, and they tend to be where those two coincide. Regarding the Phase 3 program, so we kicked the Phase 3 program off just a couple of months ago. And so just a bit of backdrop on what we had to do going into this. One of the fortunate things about Atlanta, and this is a big consideration working in Nevada or anywhere in the U.S., is Atlanta is covered with what's called a plan of operation. So if you pick up a project in Nevada and it's BLM ground, federal ground, which covers 86% of the state, if you want to do a small disturbance, you can file what's called a notice with the Bureau of Land Management. And that takes 15 days for the BLM to essentially say nothing, and you can go disturb up to 5 acres of ground and drill. And so in that regard, the state of Nevada is an amazing place to explore. Once you go past those 5 acres, Nevada is still an amazing place to explore, but you have to spend some time to get permitted. And you have to go through what's called a plan of operation. A plan of operation makes sure that you're going into environmental impacts and not disturbing something that could potentially be harmful to the environment or to wildlife. Atlanta is already covered with a plan of operation that spans about 75% of the project area. That plan of operation was put in place before we got the project. And so when we decided we wanted to do our Phase 3 drilling, we were stepping outside of the resource area, which is on private ground, into the federal area, and we had to go ahead and update that plan of operation working with the local BLM to make sure we could get permission. It took about 5 months because we had to go through and do a whole bunch of new study work, sage grouse, raptors, water, etc. And we fairly quickly got through the process, and they updated what was called our number 2 modification. The number 2 modification paved the way for us to start our Phase 3 drill program and construct some roads at the top of the South Quartzite Ridge. We brought a road crew in. We got our road construction done in 2 weeks instead of 2 months, way under budget. And we started drilling, and we've had 2 drill rigs operating now for the past couple months. We've plugged quite a few holes. We put out an update a few weeks ago, and we're waiting for assays to come back. Now, the hope for Phase 3, just so expectations are not off, we're going out and we're looking at areas that look like, on the geophysics, that we have intrusive pluming coming up towards surface that might coincide with these deep-seated structures, because we know when the 2 of those happen at the Atlanta resource area, we of course get a lot of gold. And so if we can find other instances in the district that have this same fingerprint, we're hoping that we can find a similar set of circumstances. Our expectation going into it, though, with 25 targets like this is 20, 24 are going to be dead, but we're hoping that we find one that is, the next discovery for us. And so what we're doing is we're waiting for these assays to come back in. We're dancing around the targets, giving time for that 30-day assay lag to come in, tell us, hey, this area is dead, this area has, trace elements, this has a little bit of gold, let's go back, poke some more holes, and try to vector in on something more significant. Drilling at the top of the ridge, which is the area that is directly south of the resource area, has been challenging. The drilling through quartzite is not easy, especially when you try to drill angle holes. The quartzite really can grab those RC bits and jam them up or change the trajectory that you're trying to go on. And so we've constantly been retooling, and we're bringing in a different rig that's going to better be able to tackle that, and that's showing up here in the next couple of days. Other than the drilling on the top of the South Quartzite Ridge, we've had phenomenal speed in the drilling, and the costs per meter are coming in at like $75 all in, which is incredibly cheap. Now, of course, it's RC, it's not core, but we're talking 250 to 300 meter holes, and these things are getting knocked out in a day and a half. So we're making a lot of progress very quickly. We just did a second update to the plan with the BLM, and this time we've gotten it approved in a matter of 3 weeks instead of 5 months. So what we're demonstrating to the market is that we have a very good relationship with the BLM. We're following the protocol. We now know that as we get things back in, as we hopefully see positive drill assays come in, if we need to put new roads in or if we need to modify our plan, it's something we can do. But this latest modification that just came in gives us another 35 holes that we can drill. And we're just waiting on the final stamp of approval from the state to finalize that last modification. So everything's going really well. We're getting through a lot of holes without spending a lot of money. Of course, we haven't put any assays out from phase 3 yet, and that's something I'd like to see some initial results come out by the end of February, just to give the market a sense of, hey, where are we finding those sniffs? Where are we not? Maybe something really significant breaks through in that time, or are we following the trail to ultimately tag into something really significant, which is our goal here.
Thank you for that overview, Collin. Really appreciate that. And I guess that leads me into the next question I would have regarding what is the long-term thesis with this project. I think we have given quite a good overview of what is there and what the targets are. And of course, now you're doing that phase 3 drilling campaign where you're trying to find the next discovery, high risk, high reward drilling. And perhaps you can take us along what the long-term vision for this project would be. Are you looking to develop this yourself, or how should we view this?
Nevada is, of course, the #1 mining jurisdiction in the world, and so it's highly sought after. Coming out of the bear market, which, let's say, bottomed in 2015, around 2020 we saw an influx of mostly companies that had been in Nevada in the past or had never been in Nevada, coming back in. And what they did is they essentially picked off all the low-hanging fruit, so that if you look today, there's not really any development stage assets that have a clear economic path towards development that are left on the table. And so what we've seen, and just being in the advanced exploration stage, is we've had a lot of companies that have been in our data room on site and in communication with us for the past 2 years. That makes sense. If you're going to find something significant, you want it to be in Nevada. And the reason I'm in Nevada is because Nevada gets the best premiums of any jurisdiction on a takeover. So to answer your question, what are we building this for? We'll do whatever it takes to unlock the most value. It's very, very difficult to have a significant discovery in Nevada and have that team take it to production, because it just doesn't last. Somebody will come along and offer you more money than a reasonable person would say no to, considering all the risks involved of actually going through to production. So I think for myself and most of our significant shareholders, we're here for a discovery on the back of the discoveries we've already made, showing the big potential, the multi-million ounce potential at Atlanta, and we're going to be more than happy to go ahead and take advantage of that through an acquisition if we are so fortunate in attracting that interest.
Yeah, so that would place you into a potential exit, which also lines up with the track record of your team, right? You've done multiple successful exits in the past.
Yeah, in particular, our executive chairman and chief financial officer have built and sold 7 companies in a row, the last one being GoldX for $365 million. And in total, they've done $3.5 billion in cumulative exits. So that's their specialty. I'm working very hard with the team to make sure that we have a product ready that is going to be sellable. And of course, if the discovery gets juicy enough, probably those gentlemen won't have to do much work at all to attract a suitor. Like I said, there's plenty of eyes and ears on this project right now.
That's definitely great color to hear there. I would like to take you actually to the financial status of Nevada King Gold. You already highlighted your drilling cost, $75 per meter for the RC drilling all in, which is of course a phenomenal figure compared to some people that are in the hundreds of dollars, especially if they're in a remote location, partially thanks to your infrastructure. You recently raised, I believe, almost $12 million in November 2024. How far does that take you, and what is roughly the current financial status of Nevada King Gold?
The company's got $6 million at the moment, and that will take us through the middle of the year. We've been very fortunate, both in having my support as well as the support of another large shareholder and other shareholders that also own a significant amount of shares, to be able to finance this company to be able to explore actively over the last 3 years. As you're aware, and your listeners are painfully aware, I'm sure, it's been a very, very challenging set of circumstances to be in the venture market over the past few years. Gold prices have recently picked up, and I think there's very green pastures ahead, but that money, of course, has not made its way down really into the mining companies and certainly not into the exploration stage. And so The capital that has been available is either fast money that is looking for, goodies like warrants associated to a financing, or they're very selective groups that are being supportive of particular names. And so we've been fortunate to attract that type of interest, because if you want a chance of actually making a discovery, unless you get very, very lucky, you've got to get into the right environment and you've got to spend money, and you've got to sometimes spend tens of millions of dollars doing that, which is exactly the path that we've been on. And so very fortunate that we've been able to do that over the last few years. I've put about $15 to $20 million of my own money into this over the past 4 years. Our second largest shareholders in a similar boat, having put about $15 million in. And then most recently on the last financing, we've actually started to attract some institutional ownership into the name. Institutional ownership is always great to have because it tends to have a bit of a longer term outlook, deeper pockets, and also gives you a bit of a stamp of approval and the work that their technical team is doing to go ahead and buy into something. So about half of the $11 million that we raised on the last financing was through institutional shareholders, a couple of whom have been in the name for 2 or 3 years now. So, we're building a good, strong shareholder base. Everybody's very aligned, and in terms of risk of financing, that's low. One thing that shareholders always have to be mindful of on companies that are constantly raising money is risk associated to not being able to raise the money, but more likely the discounts and the pain that the share price goes through every time they have to raise money. And we've bucked that trend. Every single financing we've done for the last 4 years has been done essentially at market with no warrant, so there's no discount. And the result of that is when we raise money, instead of the share price going down, it tends to stay even or even go up. And so it hasn't been easy to do, but it's been the path that we've used very successfully to raise money, and the one that we're going to continue to try to stay the course on until we get into a market that is more robust and that is willing to finance exploration activity.
Thank you for that overview as well. And of course, anyone watching can go through the CDI filings online. I mean, I did it myself this morning. 30.3 million Canadian dollars invested directly, and that's for 42 million shares that you've bought. Doesn't include the first couple because we don't know pricing for that, but that's enormous vote of confidence from your side, and very different to some firms where founders like you yourself get enormous amounts of shares just for being a founder. So impressive to see. You own 80% of the company. And perhaps we can talk about your priorities with this firm. I know you're a very busy man and you do some different things as well. So perhaps we can talk about your focus on this company. How much of your time is it roughly taking and how much is it in focus? We know the vote of confidence, but time as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. Up until recently, and for the past 5 years, I had also been the CEO of a company called Newfound Gold, which is more prominently known than Nevada King, and it has a fantastic discovery at its Queensway project in Newfoundland. And just recently, with Newfound Gold moving towards the next stage, going into study work and ultimately hopefully moving towards development, we've brought in an incredible chairman by the name of Paul Hewitt, who's sold his last 2 companies for over $1 billion each, or I should say the last one for $1.3 billion and the one before that for $700 million. And then we also brought in a new CEO named Keith Boyle, who's built and went through development on several mining projects before. And so that's allowed me to step away, knowing that the company is in better hands than it would have been in my hands. And I get to focus on the area that I'm extremely passionate about, which is financing exploration and having my hands on exploration. There's nothing more exciting. There's no release of adrenaline greater than when you tag into a discovery. I experienced that firsthand with Newfound Gold, and it was an incredibly rewarding time in my life and career. And I believe that Nevada King has that same potential. The system and the geological setting that the Atlanta project in can produce 10 and 20 million ounce deposits. We see that with Round Mountain, and we see that world over in these settings. And so that's why I've gone ahead and I've put a lot of my money and my time behind this. In terms of how much time goes into it, I've got a great team around me that helps to support me. Some days, probably 100% of my time is going into Nevada King, other days less. In terms of my commitments right now, Nevada King, I'm the CEO, and Palisades Gold Corp, I'm also the chairman and CEO. That's my investment company, and that's where I tend to incubate my deals, I incubated Newfound Gold and Nevada King out of it. It's not a significant time commitment over there. So that's my focus, and I couldn't be happier at this point with where I'm able to focus my attention.
Great, definitely good to see that singular focus there as well. Thank you for taking us along there. I guess the last main question I have for you now is 2025, how that's going to look. We talked about the financial status. The money is carrying you through at least roughly middle this year. We know some upcoming catalysts, but perhaps you can give us a bit more color on how we should foresee 2025.
Right. So from a news flow perspective, we've got a couple releases left on the phase 2 drilling. That would have been drilling in and close by to the resource area. So I would expect in the next few weeks that the rest of the phase 2 drilling will have gone through all the QA/QC and will be in news release form with cross sections drawn around it, and we'll be able to get that out to the market. Obviously, we're deep into the phase 3 drilling. We just crossed the 10,000 meter mark. So if you look at when we started this thing and how quickly we've hit 10,000 meters, we're drilling a lot of holes quickly. And that's great. You know, people ask me when I raise money, what are you going to do with it? And I say, I'm going to spend it as quickly as I can, and I'm going to make sure as much of it goes into the ground. If you're taking intelligent bets, playing the battleships field, you know, you've got a better shot of hitting a battleship if you're putting more pins in the board. So that's what we're doing. We're going to drill quickly. We've got my support, the second largest shareholder, and many of the other shareholders' support, and we've got growing institutional following. And so we're going to continue drilling holes into this thing until we close off every avenue possible to make a discovery, or more likely, in my opinion, find something. So that's what we're working on. We should start to get the results out from the phase 3 drilling here over the next month or two. We always tell a great story. We've got an exploration manager named Cal Heron, who's in his 70th year now, and he's got a lot of experience, and he's got a lot of personality, and that comes through in the way we communicate with the press releases. We're extremely open and technically oriented in the press releases. You could spend a couple days probably going through the press releases from the last 5 years. And we're going to continue telling that story, and I think our shareholders really enjoy being a part of the discovery, which is the way that we try to make it happen. So we're going to keep up with that, and I think if we have any luck at all during 2025, we're going to have a much different share price, and hopefully we're drilling off another mineralized zone here by the later part of this year.
All right, thank you so much, Collin. Exciting to follow in 2025. Hopefully you'll find a new mineralized zone this year, and we'll keep our eyes on the story. Thank you so much.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Stein. This has been awesome.